Good morning. It's not worth travelling all the way from bloody Cornwall to stand up and give you a whole lot of anodyne crap about social enterprise and still regard the fact that... Have you noticed how everybody talks about us as if we're somehow the rather thick third son of the third son? That if to be a boss of a social enterprise means, well done, you're doing quite well. I hate that sort of hushed, library tone, as if we're somehow... The word charity and competence don't go together. To me, social enterprise, the battle, first of all, is a psychological battle. I would like to think that companies like Unilever, Shell, BP could be social enterprises. I would like to think that anybody in this room should aspire, if they're running a social enterprise, to be good enough to run organizations like that well. Why do we always have to talk about our field as if somehow, you know, they're jolly nice little things in the corner that we've got to help along, that are going to limp? In my view, excuse me for being political, there are a number of issues, there are a number of businesses that I would like to see as social enterprises, and I would bet my house that this audience would probably agree with me. They're called water. Energy, maybe. And having just had the delightful journey from Cornwall, might I suggest railways? You know, one of the real big cons about social enterprise is this. There is a belief somehow that the private sector, we teach ourselves that the private sector is rigorous and professional and dynamic. Yeah, I've met one or two. And of course, those of us with a softer, more female persuasion who run the country, perhaps, are supposed to be actually not very good at that sort of stuff, but we care a lot. Well, it's all crap. Many of the best charities are run like very, very fine businesses, and an awful lot of companies I come across are run like accidents. They really are. And also, I mean, when we're talking, this is not personal, Steve, to you, but I often talk at regional development agency dues around the country. Do you recognize these phrases? Centre of excellence, innovation, out of the box, joined up thinking, leading edge, cutting edge, bleeding edge, which is when you get too close, I believe, to the cutting edge. Have you also noticed that organizations act in inverse proportion to the amount of jargon they use to be excellent, to actually be it? It's a bit like you're frightened you're going to have your toes bitten by a crocodile under the bed as a child. That actually, it's a bit like people who have signs up in their bogs which say you don't have to be mad to work here, but if you are, it helps. Have you noticed that all the people who have those signs are the least mad people you've ever met? They just so desperately want to be a bit ooh and a bit ah. And they're not. They're not. Innovation, actually, let me tell you where innovation comes from. We all have it. We all have it. We're all creative. But actually, it comes from having the confidence to trust your own instincts. That's where it actually comes from. It comes from having the bravery not to believe that hidden on the top shelf at Heathrow or wherever, those endless arrays of business management manuals. Have you seen those when you go there? For all those executives who somehow are actually shivering with insecurity and think that between these hallowed pages they're going to get the secret to being Gordon Gekko. And the truth is that they're all Bibles. They're all motherhood and apple pie, and they're all bollocks. Because when you read the Harvard, the MBA in 10 days, it doesn't tell you anything about attitude. And it's attitude and values, what Ed was alluding to earlier. What the thing that should distinguish a social enterprise is the values that go into it. I think one of the most interesting things I've come across recently is a lot of people in the city reckon that corporate life as we know it is going to be dead in 30 years. And I would say that Eden would be a good example of why. When I look at all my top executives, my top 8 people who work for me have all decamped from very successful jobs in very successful organizations because they no longer want to work for corporations where there's no ethical capital. And this is happening all over the place. 40% of school leavers apparently do not want to work for a corporation. And the reason why I came here today is because I really do believe that social enterprise is hugely important, but we need to be a bit more bullish about its potential. We need to understand its transformative power, not in terms of getting people who previously found it difficult to get jobs. That's kind of a loser's mentality. What we should be about is talking about how we can transform the services in this country to actually act really efficiently and bring wealth back to a wider stakeholder group. Who has written down anywhere that a social enterprise does not have shareholders? Who said that? Who had the right to say that? When you say we've got to get the news out to the people out there what a social enterprise is, I'll bet you if each one of you had to write down what a social enterprise is, we'd have about 800 different definitions. But actually the battle for us is to think of terms of engagement, rules of engagement that can actually bring that welding power of private and public together for a greater good. Who tells you that life is so fast today? It's so fast, isn't it? Is it? Might it not be that we don't look at things, so we're skating very fast across the top, but we're not looking at what's underneath? I don't believe life is any faster than it has ever been, but most people don't look. They're so action-packed, so adrenaline-driven, they're not looking. The reason I'm telling you this is simply because, going back to the social enterprise agenda, we need to spend some time breathing deeply, thinking about rules of engagement that would make Plato smile. Really canny systems that actually forge better behavior out of us through having put in place rules of engagement that notice the benefits that everybody needs to get out of any transaction. The Eden example is actually quite a good example because it's not, Eden is a social enterprise, and we were very fortunate that we lived in a place of great deprivation, which meant there was a predisposition in officers who were looking after that area to look at anything that just might bail us out of a really awkward situation. The economy was, it was rat shit, absolute rat shit. But we built it out of innocence. It was built completely out of innocence. I went to the local development committee. I said, I've got this great idea to build the eighth one of the world, 3 miles east of St. Austell. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I've got no business plan, no drawings, but you just got to believe me, guys. They gave me £25,000 to go away. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we were eventually awarded half of the then project cost of £74 million by the Millennium Commission. Of course, there's another thing in Britain, you see, innovation in the civil service. I mean, it's been done thousands of times before, but you've called it something new. That is a problem, because it means that when you do a business plan to do anything new, no one knows how to judge it. Therefore, there's only one technique possible, and I'm going to share it with you. It's called lying. Okay? You've got to lie and work backwards so that it becomes a self-fulfilling truth. So we brought in the Eden project on time and on budget without a single major argument. And since then, we've invested a lot more. We've invested £130 million in Eden. But if you were to ask me, if you put a rusty razor blade to my throat and say you have 1 minute to say why you did it, it would be that we wanted to find the most derelict place on earth and create life in it. What it's about is how do you create a culture for yourself where you're deliberately ripping the blinkers off your head? So rule number 1, of course, is you're not allowed to come to work unless you say good morning to 20 people before you start work. Right? Rule number 2 is you've got to read 2 books that everybody that knows you would say were completely outside of your experience and review them for your colleagues. Rules 3, 4, and 5, you're going to see 1 movie, 1 concert, 1 piece of theatre, same rules as number 2. Rule number 6 is you've got to make a speech once a year about why you like working for me. If you can't do it, you've got to resign. I find it concentrates the mind. Rule number 7, I don't have the comfort of religion, but I'm very, very superstitious. I believe that if good fortune lands in your lap and you don't share it with others, not only will you lose it, but it will never return to you because you were shown to be not having been worthy of having it in the first place. So rule number 7 is you've got to actually conduct a guerrilla act of goodwill to someone you do not know once a year. You've got to do something really nice to someone you've never met, and they must never know you did it. And my team love doing it. It's such a gas. So that's how we run Eden. Just the last thing I would say about a social enterprise, it cost £130 million. It has already put £800 million back into the Cornish economy, which is more than double the entire money that has come from Europe for the whole of the Southwest. So to think of social enterprise as being piddling little things which you have to talk about with the library shuffle is nonsense. The thing that I hope the minister will take on board is this is a fantastic opportunity. I mean this really seriously. All over the country now, to do with the climate debate that's coming up later, yeah? There are going to be opportunities for starting new energy companies, which will link agricultural production, which will link all sorts of different aspects of the economy. These ESCOs, as they're called, these drivers of energy, are a fantastic area for social enterprise. And why they're so social is that if you set them up regionally, then everybody who lives in that region is likely to buy their energy from that company. And if they know that by buying from that company, the profits from that company can be used to pay for social benefits in those areas, it is a wonderful virtuous circle, which means that the revenue is actually going back to stakeholders. And so I think it's fantastically exciting, because we can do it and it works. I think it is the model for the future organizing of our collective state assets. I'm sorry I've rambled so much. I'm sorry I've ranted. I feel very passionately about it. I hope today goes really, really well. Good to see you. Bye.